Salt covers the earth. It's everywhere.
Have criticised the money that the Indian government spends on its space program, when so many of its 1.2 billion people are poor.
The rest of us just call it salt. It's in nearly everything, from our blood to this stone.
The UK still gives the country hundreds of millions of pounds in aid every year.
Down here, salt is a way of life.
Obviously, the environment down here is all salt. The ceiling's salt, the floor is salt, the walls are salt, and to an extent, the air is salt. And you breathe that in and you can constantly taste the salt.
Exploration. I mean, to see a moment like that, India makes such a leap. It's quite something, isn't it? With so much attention from all of us now on missions to Mars.
What sets salt apart from some other resources is that it's naturally recyclable. So we're never going to run out.
Are there spin-offs that people now are actually feeling? Because the obvious question is, well, India, you look at it, you have so many sort of domestic problems you could be spending their money on. Are there spin-offs now on the ground for your country?
Each stage becomes a mini ecosystem based on the increasing level of salt.
Russia, which didn't even work. So how did India do it? And is it a fair comparison?
Or a total of nearly 50 quadrillion tons of salt.
According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the mean annual income of an aeronautical engineer in the U.S. is just under $104,000. In a country where the average per capita income is around $1,400, India's engineers in the program are reportedly making significantly less.
All this salt produced with little human intervention.
Is there a new space race, and does it include India? It's not clear yet. India's triumph reminds the world that space isn't just for the wealthy industrial countries to explore.
Salt's properties, harnessed properly, can solve many modern problems.
And they do it they can do it very, very cheaply. But I've had lots of tweets this morning. The question you mentioned about the UK doing this. So here's the question. India has a space program. India has nuclear weapons. A third of Indians live on less than $1 a day. But if they've got a space program, they've got a nuclear program, should the likes of the UK, Australia, be giving India aid? You've got about 30 seconds.
Impossible to imagine that we could live without salt.
And it's already triggered a debate about the benefits of exploring another planet when so many Indians struggle for basic necessities.
Sometimes salt is lurking where you least expect it.
Though it has been in existence for nearly 50 years, the very fact that India has a space program is unknown to much of the world. But
large doses of salt.
The savings are achieved in part because engineering labor is cheaper.
We cannot avoid salt.
But spending any money on space exploration here is controversial. India is still a developing country where nearly a third of the population, about 400 million people, live on less than $1.25 a day.
Salt is collected right off the surface.
We're in a slum in the city of Bangalore, less than 10 miles from the headquarters of the Indian Space Agency. She says she was sad when she first heard about the Mars mission.
In other words, too much salt in your body, in your blood.
So much of money that is being spent to send a rocket out into outer space, when we know that here on Earth, in my country, there are children dying every day because they have no food to eat.
The 1 million tons of salt harvested here each year mainly goes to...
I think that if they didn't spend the money on the satellite, that they would spend the money on women and girls issues?
No, they would not. They would not. Their priorities are certainly not looking at children, women, human beings who are in need.
Are too salty to support most life.
But Dr. Radhakrishnan defends the Indian space program budget. In total, about $1 billion a year.
On a global level, India's program is incredibly inexpensive. On a local level, it's still very hard for people to comprehend on the streets of Bangalore or elsewhere.
What makes salt taste so, well, salty?
Radhakrishnan points out that the entire Indian space program accounts for 1/3 of 1% of the nation's budget. Those numbers may make it easier to justify.
When you throw salt into the equation.
Now, I don't know what's more incredible to discover, that there's water on the moon or that India has launched a space probe. Now that India is on the moon, you know what this means? We're going to have to call the moon the next time we need technical support from Bell.
Next step, to study the red planet. Some have questioned whether India should spend on its space program when a third of the country lacks basic facilities like electricity.
India now has launched 104 satellites on board a single rocket, setting what its space agency calls a new world record.
Now finally, India has successfully set a record by launching 104 satellites into orbit at the same time.
ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, is by far the most successful space agency, given the fact that it hasn't had any major or any massive failures in the last 10 years.
All of the nano satellites are from other countries, including Israel, Kazakhstan, and the Netherlands, Switzerland, United Arab Emirates, and 96 are from the United States.
But India's space administration, known as ISRO, says it's not dependent on US business.
In this launch itself, India has launched a satellite right from Switzerland to Kazakhstan to Israel to UAE and many other countries. So there are many countries which are knocking on the door of ISRO to launch their satellites.